What do you think about Jesus? I mean, who is Jesus really? What would your answer to that question be? Jesus asked that very question to his disciples, and the answer provides the theme of the entire book of Matthew. Don't miss today's episode.
Welcome to Everyday Truth with Kurt Skelly. We believe the Bible is true and relevant to everyone, everywhere, every day. If today's conversation is a help to you, take a moment to leave a review or share it with a friend. Thanks for listening. Now, let's join Kurt for today's episode.
Hey friends, welcome. We are again in Matthew chapter 16, and I kind of left you hanging yesterday because we began talking about Jesus' rebuke, kind of a mild rebuke to his disciples when they had forgotten that bread. Now, Jesus didn't rebuke them for forgetting something, but, and I'm glad for that, because if Jesus rebuked us for forgetting things and being absent-minded, I would be living in constant rebuke. But the disciples misunderstood. Jesus was actually warning them about the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. And the fact that these religious leaders were very subtle, like leaven is subtle, unseen, small, but it can affect the way we think. It can ruin. A little leaven leavens the whole lump. So be careful of these questions and these insinuations, these question marks that of the devil. He's a questioner, and the Pharisees and Sadducees place upon the truth of God's word. And he says that back in verse number 6, take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Look at verse number 8, which when Jesus perceived, so when they assumed, oh, he's mad at us because we forgot the bread, Jesus said, no, it has nothing to do with the bread that you forgot. So it says in verse 8, when Jesus perceived, he said unto them, O ye of little faith. Guys, you're thinking on a sight level. You're thinking about physical bread. I'm talking about spiritual realities. O ye of little faith, why reason ye among yourselves, because ye have brought no bread? Do ye not yet understand? And I see the rebuke there in the word yet. Do you not yet understand? Guys, we've been over this before. I've been teaching you these lessons. Are you still not getting it? Do you not yet understand? Neither remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000? How many baskets took you up? And verse number 10, neither the 7 loaves of the 4,000. How many baskets took you up? So Jesus is saying, guys, you're worried about physical provision. You're worried about these minor things. Guys, were you there when I fed 5,000? Were you there when I fed the 4,000? Did you see? There was plenty left over. It's not a matter of you having to remember to meet your needs and you having to worry about physical things. Guys, don't you understand that as we engage in ministry, as we follow the will of the Father, as you participate with me in gospel ministry, the meeting of the needs is incidental to that. Look at verse number 11. How is it that ye do not understand that I spake it not to you concerning bread, that ye should beware of, but that ye should be aware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees? Guys, you're still fixated on here and now, what you need, what you can get. And I'm trying to get you to look up and see that there are greater spiritual priorities in your life, greater priorities. They are the spiritual priorities than the priorities that you are focusing upon. I think the Lord says that to us today as well. Think about your own day today. Think about maybe you're in your car on the way to school or to work. Maybe you have a full calendar or a list of things that you're just trying to get done today. If we're not careful, we make our lives all about those physical things. And that's part of life. We got to eat. We've got to pay our bills. We have to get the car down for an oil change and all the things that you have going on. But wow, our focus, we ought to be thinking about spiritual realities. We ought to be thinking about what God is doing. We ought to be thinking at a different plane. And that's what Jesus is talking about here. In fact, look what it says in verse number 12. Then understood they how that he bade them not beware of the leaven of bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. So when Jesus re-explained it and rebuked them a bit for it, they said, okay, now we get it. We get it. Now, that's important because what that's telling you and me, and what Matthew is reiterating here, is that there is now a new level of understanding among these followers of Jesus. They're beginning to see at a deeper level. They're beginning to understand things at a more profound level. And that's important because Jesus is going to ask them some other questions, and they're going to have to understand some other realities that are really, really deep. So look at verse number 13. When Jesus came into the coasts of Caesarea Philippi. So Caesarea Philippi is located, it would be about an hour drive from the north part of the Sea of Galilee. That's where they are here in the early part of chapter 16. It would be about, about an hour drive. We've made that drive many times. I'm trying to think how many miles that would be. Maybe 60 miles. Maybe a little bit less than that, 40, 45 miles or so. It's all the way on the northern part of the country of Israel today. Now, understand that during Jesus' day, this was part of Philip's tetrarchy. That's why you call it Caesarea Philippi. And Caesarea, it was built in honor of, Philip built it in honor of Caesar, right? Because you were always doing something in honor of Caesar because you worked at his pleasure, as opposed to Caesarea Maritima. So Caesarea, the one where Paul was in prison for 2 years, the one where Cornelius was and Peter went up, that Caesarea is by the sea. That's by the Mediterranean Sea, and it's called Caesarea Maritima, which means by the sea. So Caesarea Philippi is to be distinguished from that. It's a separate place. And Caesarea Philippi was a very popular city. It was teeming with people, and it was known especially for its religion of Pan. You remember Pan, like Peter Pan, Pan, which was the half goat, half man. And I'm not going to say much about it on the podcast because it's really sordid and R-rated when you think about he was just not a good, quote unquote, small g deity. And they were worshiping Pan, and along with the worship of Pan went many debaucherous practices. And if you ever go to Caesarea Philippi, what will really stand out to you is the rock face there. There's a rock face there that is just outstanding. It's inspiring. It's a cliff, a rock face, and in the cliff is a huge cave. Now, at the bottom of that cave was a spring, and that fed the Banyas River. So Banyas actually is Panyas, but because the Muslims couldn't pronounce their P's, they pronounced it B, Banyas. So the Banyas River, and sometimes that region is called Banyas, is one of the headwaters of the Jordan River. So Jordan means from Dan. So Dan is the northernmost tribe up there. All these words in the Bible have meaning. Really interesting. But Caesarea Philippi was a popular place, and one of the reasons it was popular is because of its worship of Pan. And people would make pilgrimages from all over the then-known world to come to that place. And it was a major city in the tetrarchy of Philip, and it was a crossroads. So picture Jesus now, who's leaving Galilee. He's traveling way up north to Caesarea Philippi with his disciples, and there they are. And this will be the occasion and the site of the greatest declaration that man has ever made And it's recorded for us right here. So I just want you to get that picture. Hey, by the way, did you know what the cave is actually called? What it was called? It was called the gates of hell. And don't miss that, because in the worship of Pan, they would sometimes even offer human sacrifice and cast the sacrifice into that cave. So, wow, the gates of hell. Don't miss that. There were also other shrines there and other deities that they served. And they had built a huge new temple to Augustus because emperor worship was a thing as well. So just suffice it to say that this was a very pagan place. And Jesus and his disciples would be really out of place in this really pagan place, worshiping multiple false gods. So look at it, verse number 13. When Jesus came unto the coast of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, Whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? So Jesus is seeding their thinking. Remember, he's just talked to them about, hey guys, think on a deeper level. Don't just think at a physical level, but what are the real spiritual realities? What really is important? And he speaks now to his own identity and says, what are people saying about me? What have you heard? And the disciples answered that. Verse number 14, and they said, some say that thou art John the Baptist. Remember, Herod Antipas had thought that. He thought that Jesus was John risen from the dead, right? So because he had a guilty conscience. So people were saying he was John the Baptist. Others were saying Elias or Elijah. Elijah was known for his bold preaching. Elijah was known for miracles he did. Remember the widow at Zarephath. Elijah was known for being from that area of Galilee. So they're saying you're John the Baptist. They're saying you're Elijah. Others, Jeremiah. So people said, this is Jeremiah reincarnated. This must be Jeremiah. Jeremiah was the weeping prophet. And perhaps the compassion of Jesus and the fact that he just had this heart for people. Maybe that was what associated him with Jeremiah. But people were saying this. Some people were saying John the Baptist or Elijah or Jeremiah. Now think about that. If you in your life were being compared to some of the heroes of the faith, that would be impressive. And what the disciples are saying is what people are saying impressive things about you. I mean, this is amazing. They're calling you John the Baptist or Elijah or Jeremiah or one of the prophets. But that's not who Jesus was, obviously. And that's really not a compliment because Jesus is so much more than all of that. So watch what Jesus says in answer to their answer. Verse 15. But he saith unto them, But whom say ye that I am? So I just asked you, what are other people saying? And you told me. But who am I really? What do you guys think? Now, this is a probing question because it speaks to their faith. It speaks to their understanding. Remember, Jesus had said, do you still not yet understand? You don't understand? So now Jesus is speaking to their understanding. And look at verse 16. And Simon Peter answered. So that was typical. Simon Peter was not afraid to speak up. And he often spoke for the others, was willing to be the one. He'd be the kid in the classroom that would raise his hand and say, I don't understand, right? And so we're grateful. And I'm sure the disciples, to a degree, were grateful for Simon Peter to verbalize perhaps the things that they were thinking. So here's what Simon Peter says. And Simon Peter answered and said, Thou art the Christ. What a declaration. All one-syllable words. Thou art the Christ. 4 powerful words. You are the Messiah. Because that's what Christ means. The name Christ is the New Testament counterpart, means anointed one, of the Old Testament word Messiah. You are the Messiah. Now remember, the purpose of the writing of the book of Matthew is to demonstrate to Jews that are reading this book that Jesus is that Messiah. He is that coming king. He is the one that will rule and reign. and they missed him. So here he's demonstrating that the disciples, the ones that knew Jesus best, had come to that conclusion over time, that this indeed irrefutably, unchangeably is the Messiah. Thou art the Christ. And then he goes on and says, the Son of the living God. You're the Son of God. And son of was an idea of you share the nature of the living God. So in Jewish understanding, to say you were the son of meant you share the nature of. That's why in John 5, where Jesus said, my Father works and I'm going to work, they were so upset, took umbrage, because they said he claimed that God was his father. That makes him the Son of God, and that is blasphemy. He's making himself equal with God. So understand that their understanding would be to say the Son of God or the Son of the living God in that sense as a title would be to claim equality with God. And so Peter is making a bold declaration. You are the Messiah. You are the Christ. You are the Son of God, the living God, the real God. Now, that is what we call the Great Confession, where Peter, on behalf of the other disciples, because the question was to them as a group, whom say ye, that's plural, that I am. Peter speaking on behalf of the group, and he says that you're the Messiah. You're the Son of God. And Jesus' response to this is so good and so important and instructive. So let's look at it. Verse number 17. And Jesus answered and said, blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah. Remember, Bar means son of Jonah. So Simon, son of Jonas. Blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood hath not revealed it unto thee, but my Father which is in heaven. Peter, the declaration you just made is nothing short of the special revelation of God through you. That declaration was given by God through you. In other words, I am not the Messiah. I am not the Son of God because you think I am. I am the Son of God, and I am the Messiah because God says I am. And you now have declared what God has revealed. And that is a really important distinction for us to make. Now, this is a bold confession. It is a correct confession. But Jesus has some things to say now that they know this. So while we call this the Great Confession, what Jesus immediately does is he explains what it means to be the Messiah. He explains what it means to be the Son of God and clarifies that. So while Matthew 16 represents the Great Confession, I want to talk next episode about what I call the Great Clarification. So don't miss that. I'll be right here. Hope to see you tomorrow. God bless you, my friends.